Well, hello everyone. This is Adam Asnes from Lingoport, once again with our monthly webinar. It's pretty much monthly. Sometimes we skip a month. We'll probably skip August. Anyway, I always look to bring industry guests here. Often it's from the client side. Today is a little special. We're going with the vendor side. And I think it's really important to have different vendor perspectives, especially with all the change that's happening these days. And that's because vendors see a lot of different companies, whereas with a client, they have their world, which is very important and very often has some very interesting insight. But vendors have to see it all and have to adapt to it all. And so I like including them and I think they get a lot of short shrift in the industry in terms of marketing presentation. But I have some friends here at various companies. There's a good chemistry amongst us, which is also pretty fun. I'll get into introductions in just a minute. Before we start really rolling on this webinar, I'm going to just mention that a very important part of this questionnaire, of this webinar, is the Q&A, which we do kind of at the end. So the format is I'm going to throw out a few questions for our friends here to answer, and then we'll take audience questions at the end. One of the things I always suggest is if we're talking and a question pops in your mind, take an old school pen and write it down right away. That way, you know, it's clearly captured and you don't have to remember the instance that sparked that question. Or if you're like me, if you think of a question, then you're still thinking about it too long and not listening. So that's something I do. But so write it down and then bring it up, and don't worry about it if we, you know, maybe answered it later or whatever. Just put it down. There is a Q&A interface on the Zoom that you're probably, I mean, since COVID, we're all familiar with, but just to emphasize, because some people use Teams or whatever, use the Q&A interface for questions, if you will, versus the chat, just because Q&A is where I'm going to look first for those questions. People are also following us on LinkedIn Live. And Kate, who doesn't have her picture here, but you all get email from her. Kate is monitoring LinkedIn Live for questions as well. So that's fair game for questions. Just write them down there and we'll get to them. So that's my little spiel to give us some background. And also the secret is that a lot of people are late and I always have to have a spiel to let people log in. So here we go. We're going to talk today, and you can all see my screen, about adoption strategies for AI, because there's a lot of, I mean, it's very obvious this is what's going on in the industry, but there's a lot of mixed results. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of change. There's a lot of excitement. So all of those, that whole spectrum. So we're going to talk about all of that. Now, to introduce my guests, first we have Fabiano Cid. Fabiano is in Valencia in Spain these days. For many years, he's in South America and Brazil. I probably met Fabiano 20 years ago. Can I say that without talking about how old we are? Or I am, just me. Anyway, Fabiano is a great voice in the industry, and you all should know him. He's one of the many members of the Brazilian localization mafia, even though he's out of Brazil for a while. It says 25 years of experience, but I know it's at least that much. And he's had roles within various companies, including his own. Now, Bart Maczynski, he is really one of the big fish around Grand Poisson. My French is terrible, but In any case, he has an awful lot of translation technology experience. He is leading machine learning at Language Weaver. If you follow press releases, Language Weaver Pro has recently been announced, and it's really a pretty cool AI specific solution that can even get installed on site. A lot of control, a lot of customization available for that. It's actually, I think, a very exciting product. Then we have Roman. Roman and I go back also a while because Roman and Fabiano worked together at Milengo many years ago. And we know each other and have collaborated for common customers. And then finally, there's me, Adam Asnes. I'm the founder CEO at Lingoport. We are very much involved vertically in a slice of localization expertise for software development. So everything Lingoport does, we have products and services around both internationalization and continuous localization automation. So basically automating every time developers start to work. We really feel like our mission is that localization is just really automatic, just like if everything is done right. It's almost like when you walk into a room and there's a light sensor and the lights turn on. That would be like translation. It just happens for developers. So that's what we do. And you can go to lingoport.com and see our various products and the like. All right, that was enough promotion. Let's start with our guests here. I'm going to minimize this presentation screen in a minute, but let's talk about what we've all seen. And in particular, I want everybody to talk about how you use AI in your business. So what you've seen regarding AI, adoption, and mandates as well. So with that, let's see, unshare. Boy, this unshare thing might be a problem. Stop sharing. Okay, let's take it away. Who's going first?
You start if you like. Fabiano, you first.
Okay, I'll give it a shot. I think I may be wrong, but we'll see. Roman and Bart have more the technical understanding and expertise than I do. But what I've been seeing, and this is my own experience, is that AI adoption, things changed, have been changing in the past 2 years, but recently, more last year, it has changed completely. It's not about how we're going to adopt or when we're going to adopt, it's already there. I think the main issue now is that it's widespread in the company, in the corporation, and AI and the tools that the corporations are using, they all have a translate button in every piece of software or application in the stack. What does that mean is that we language folks are kind of losing control over how things are done. So I think it's more of a governance risk that is happening at this day, and how we can bring back control into our hands and how we're going to do it.
Fully agreed. I think, there's enormous pressure from chief AI officers, from other people, and translation seems to be such a low-hanging fruit because everyone from consumer perspective knows how good LLMs are at translating. Now, when it comes to enterprise translations, it's a bit more complicated, and the thing which many people know is that there is corporate terminology, corporate style guides, corporate language, which needs to be reflected in the translation. And I think over the past 1 or 2 years, many clients have been looking for solutions how to inject the corporate terminology into the LLMs and apply stylistic rules, style guides, etc. But there are still several bigger issues which haven't been resolved. And from our experience, one of the biggest issues is related to ambiguity, because language is ambiguous, and how to overcome the ambiguity. is difficult, and also how to build more complex translation processes, which include quality assurance, because AI still behaves a bit randomly sometimes. Hallucination still happens even with the latest models, and there's sometimes random behavior where for the first 10,000 sentences it worked well, and then something breaks afterwards, which you don't understand. So you need to have a prompt chain with QA measures, and kind of making sure that you get the quality which is relevant for your target audience. And because of this pressure and because of the problems which are still there, which I think are solvable, but sometimes more difficult, or they are more complicated to resolve, there is uncertainty on the market, because many clients don't have a good understanding. What is it actually? What is the language quality which I deliver in Japan? It looks good, but I don't know, and I don't want to wait for my client replies or complaints to understand what the quality is. So yeah, that's my understanding of the current market situation. Still a lot of uncertainty.
So I agree with what both of you said. I want to add a slightly different perspective, since I kind of sit on the intersection of sales and product, and we talk to language folks, but we also talk to business leaders. One observation I would say is that there's a sort of general overconfidence about AI on the side of non-localization folks. So they think they can solve the problem on their own. And the localization teams have some catching up to do to understand how to respond to that kind of pressure. I think there is still a sort of complexity tax on using AI for language that is not very well understood outside of the localization teams. And I think that, we on the localization side have been much more cautious than perhaps the business wanted us to be, right? So how do we navigate that switch? I can give you an example from our own world. When we first started looking into applications of LLMs for translation purposes several years ago, we decided they were not good enough for straight up translation because of hallucinations and whatnot. So we built this relatively complex chain with 3 different models, with NMT doing translation, then human calibrated MTQE doing quality estimation, and only then applying LLMs to fine-tune the LLMs to post-edit, right? We right now switch the architecture of our own models to LLM-based architecture with the help from Cohere. And we are now at the point where we confidently can say this is best that our solution has ever been. So this change, this kind of shift has to be navigated to, right, inside the enterprise. The last point I would want to make is that, as an industry, we've been optimizing for the best linguistic output for the last 50 years. I don't know, since any sort of semblance of translation technology was created. But what really you need to optimize is the business outcome, and that's what the other folks in the company, in the enterprise, are telling us. You tell me how this linguistic outcome translates to a business impact that I want to make.
That's what it's all about. I just even wrote down business outcome. that really is why we do it. All right. Now, let's get to the next question here. Okay, what do you see that actually happens among various clients, from successful to maybe not so successful? I'm going to add in there that localization has also been the target of layoffs. In the US, at least, there have been terrific amount of news about tech layoffs. The totals are, I think the last webinar I did, I read off the totals of announced layoffs, and they're pretty staggering within tech. Now, of course, that's not just localization, but it's happening a lot to local. I've seen localization departments go from 14 to 2 or similarly. So let's just talk about what we see actually happens within clientele that you work with. And there's a few areas that you can choose to talk about, certainly. Not necessarily everyone here, but shall I pick who goes first? Roman, I'm going to pick on you.
Thanks a lot. So let me start with the success cases, because we have seen clients who have completely successfully implemented AI translations, also sometimes using standard tools. And these are typically smaller companies, startup, scale-up companies with a very simple tech stack, single product companies, a couple of markets, so not a huge complexity on and we have seen such companies implementing one of the standard AI-enabled TMSs or building their own workflows, and it worked. And this is what I would like to acknowledge. The problems which we have seen are related to, or are mainly with the larger organizations, larger enterprises. We also often call them the older companies, have bigger problems because they have a tech stack built historically, which is more complex. They have more stakeholders involved, more complex processes, and they have simply way more content, right? And the problems often are related to kind of content segmentation. So kind of not all content and not all target markets are require the same quality levels. And there is business critical or risk critical content which requires special treatment, and there's other content which is short lifecycle content, or let's say not so important content. Don't get me wrong, but kind of it doesn't have the same quality requirements, and you can't treat all these content types the same. So content segmentation is then adding complexity, and this is where companies are more often struggling. And at larger organizations, you also need to have interdepartmental agreement on quality standards. So if the localization team thinks this is good enough, but there are other important stakeholders in the company who have a different opinion, then it's good to have a defined quality framework with the metrics so that you don't talk about subjective quality, but objective quality. So these are kind of the main problems which we are seeing mainly with larger organizations. And then you have the aspects of terminology management, which is often a time-consuming and a bit annoying process to collect terminology and align on terminology. And then keeping up with the technological advancements. New AI models are coming out more or less every week. What does that mean for our processes which we have built so far? We should test them. We should benchmark them against other stuff. And at the end, you also need to document the processes, et cetera, et cetera. So that's getting more complicated. And this is where often smaller teams then are completely stuck with the demand.
Okay. Who's going next? Next victim.
Go ahead, Fabian.
No, you go.
Okay, all right. Well, so I wanted to add that, Roman, from what you are describing, I can agree with that, because I think the kind of momentum gets lost not because there's no relevant technology solutions or infrastructures. It's almost never purely technical, right? The tooling exists. I think the stall is organizational. Who owns the quality decision? Who sets the threshold? Who navigates, to the right governance? It's kind of incredible how unnecessarily complex content landscapes sometimes are, right? And we ran a survey from the multilingual content management point of view, and reviewed a lot of enterprise customers, and they told us that on average, 21% of localization budgets are lost before they deliver value because of, rework, inconsistencies, wrong terminology, content that was never designed for particular markets and is forced to be localized, this sort of thing. So you cannot really scale growth with that kind of waste, right? And that's what the businesses need to figure out.
Good point. Going back to what Adam was saying about lean teams, which I think is the core aspect of the discussion here. I think lean teams in large organizations, mostly medium-sized, but I think this is the new modus operandi. It's how we're gonna see things moving forward. But on the other hand, I also feel that, speaking of budgets, Bart, that you just did, that not only localization budgets are being reduced and not delivering what they expected, but also there's recent research coming out saying that CEOs and CFOs are all increasing their spend in AI, but because of the cost of tokens and the AI and implementation itself, they are not seeing results, and they are spending all their budgets, the budgets that they had for the full year, they are burning it out in Q1 already. So I think there is a discompass between the two, what is expected. And I think this will fall out into the team. So it's important that we are ready for when things start adjusting. There will be an adjustment, because the fact that these teams outside of localization think, as Bart, you mentioned earlier, Roman too, you talked about, the quality control and all these aspects. I think the question around governance, but also brand visibility, but also regulatory fields, all of these areas that have a great impact according to how things are being translated or being produced. And here, because AI has changed the game completely, we don't need to have any more English as source and then translate to other languages. We can generate content in whatever language, and we can cross-translate between languages that do not have English as the main source. But this also leads to other problems, such as the low quality of non-English AI because of the language divide, the lack of representation of minority languages in AI, because the corpus is being based mostly on English, Northern Hemisphere. So I think there are several aspects that need to be addressed, and we need to be aware of them as we move forward. But ideally position, and this goes to the people working on the buyer side, position yourselves as those people who have control over the output and who have the knowledge, the acquired knowledge of how language works. And it's not, it's not because you have a translate button in your app that you will get the best outcome.
Right. I'm going to, just add that, speaking as far as software goes and its relationship to translation, that I don't want to give AI short shrift here. It's fairly amazing. As a developer, if you're not using AI, you're kind of missing out on some productivity. You wouldn't use it for, say, complex changes that affect your software architecture, for sure. You'll get it wrong, and it will cost more to undo what you've just done. But very productive in many areas. But what we've seen is the completeness of your prompting is super important. And I would say that individual teams are not always prepared for that. And it's difficult for them to scale that kind of development. So we see teams that are developing their own systems, and then 2 years later, they're still developing their own systems. That's kind of a common thing, because there's always a problem that they didn't foresee, because it's not the only thing they do, number one. But number two, like, when it comes to logistics for software, there's security, there's interoperability, there's the fact that the API that they have to support changes regularly all the time. And then you're like kind of cleaning up behind that. There's just so much complexity in maintaining software solutions that it can get quite complicated over time, and maintaining it can really like weigh you down. But in any case, let's move on to the next question here. I'm supposed to just host and not speak, but I can't.
You can't help it.
I can't help it. It's my show. I'm going to talk. All right. So, what strong foundations actually? What do they actually require? I sort of led into this a little bit. Maybe I stole some thunder here. What do teams underestimate? What's kind of a minimum foundation that teams need to think about? Picking you, Bart. You haven't gone first yet.
So I think you alluded to it a bit. I think it all starts with asking the right questions, right? I would say even it's probably the most exciting part of the whole process, but selecting the right model is really not enough. You need to pick the right solution. So you have to ask questions like, where does my data go? Who has access to it? Is it going to be used to train models for other people? The wrong answers here can very quickly derail your project. And then there's the question on scale. We have a customer who translates 1 million words per minute. It's other people's content, not their own content. So you cannot really pay for that if you are locked into a token-based pricing framework, right? You just run out of money quickly. So how does that work? And then there's this kind of basic utility factor. Can this solution do everything you need it to do? So we had a request from a big tech company whom everybody uses their product every day. They make their own LLMs. And they asked us to translate a batch of contracts for them because we had a better PDF extraction with better OCR for non-Latin scripts. And so, yeah, can you have a model, but can it unlock the content that you needed to translate, for example? So once you answer those questions, you have to have evaluation frameworks to actually see if the solution that you picked performs according to the KPIs you want. And then you have to have a mechanism to, how do I intervene when it's not performing? Is it fine-tuning? Is it feedback? Is it some kind of reinforcement learning? You have to have all these questions in your head before you start.
Pretty good. I can go. I think for the minimum foundation, I would name 3 to start. Going back to what you both said, I would call it like a risk ladder. Understand the different types of content and how you deal with each one of them. A bad marketing copy is, it can slightly damage your marketing efforts, but a wrongly translated drug label could lead to lawsuits and risks of lives of patients. So this is something to be addressed, I think, before you start implementing any AI workflow. In that sense as well, something that I just addressed, the language. most of the AI today, unless you go into small language models or very specific providers, they are dealing with different languages. And remember, where the models are being built will dictate the quality of the languages involved. So for instance, if you're dealing with Asian languages, you go to Baidu and you go to DeepSeek, they will probably have a much better outcome than ChatGPT or OpenAI or Claude, sorry. But same with African languages. If you're looking for African languages, there are companies that are developing their own languages specifically for Africa, getting much better results with that. So understand the difference between the outputs of the languages, that how do you deal with languages. And third, decision rights documented, how, and also accountability. So deciding how you're going to treat automation before you start doing it. So what goes through full MT, full AI, what needs have more heavy human interaction in the post-editing stage, but then you have to decide again according to the content type and to the audience and the relevance and risk of the content that you're translating.
Fully agreed. And circling back to the content classification and content segmentation, which you mentioned at the beginning, Fabiano, I would often start with this part and relate that to the business value. And let me use a real life example from one of our new clients. It's a client from a luxury industry, and they have currently one of the standard tools, AI-enabled TMS tools, and they throw their content into the system and use the AI translation functionality. And then they are looking for a partner who deals with the output, to put it mildly. And they have, I would say, 95% are product descriptions for luxury goods, and that's very marketing heavy stuff. Which really needs good translation because it's a luxury brand. But at the same time, volumes are massive and budgets are a bit limited to it. And the other content is more technical content and internal communication. So what we did for them is we spent the vast majority of time in building an AI solution which optimizes the quality of the translation for the 95% of the volume. So the product description with prompting and terminology, etc., etc. So spending most of the time on what is most relevant to bring down costs. There is still human in the loop here because it cannot be avoided because of the complex style guide which we have to deal with, and we need a last editing step. But the human part is probably 10 to 15% compared to previous human models. For the technical content, it's more UI strings and coming from applications, etc. We have different problems because with UI the main problem is contextualization or ambiguity of short strings, and you don't know how to translate single word buttons, etc., etc. But it's not so super relevant. You could fix that with a technical solution if you would go into string IDs and other meta information. Yes, that would be exactly your business, Adam. But here it doesn't make sense to spend hundreds of hours for the contextualization because it's a bit difficult. Because the volume is not super high, so we do more of an MTPE approach to that. But for the mass volumes, we are going into the direction of post-editing speed of 1,500 to 2,000 words. So optimizing costs for what is really high volume, high relevant, business critical for the client.
I will say in terms of UI volume, I'll throw out a number, for instance, because we see it. Like we have one customer who's just exceeded 20 million words of UI content this year. Wow. So it happened. Like there are some organizations that really scale that large. That's the exception, you know. But it really does happen. And when we do talk about foundations, we didn't really discuss it very. We touched on it. It's also like the non-sexy, non-AI stuff that's just what's the foundation of your automation? You know, what parts connect to what parts, so which we're not really talking about in this webinar, but it's super important, you know. It's what actually, you know, the executives aren't talking about it because it seems like understood, but it's, you know, those handoffs are not always automatic that we see. All right. I'm going to preface this question that, you know, last month we had one of our speaker guests, Hui Zhu from Visa. She's kind of super interesting because, you know, here she is at this, you know, very well-known worldwide customer company. She's a customer of ours, and she is the lone localization person for that particular part of Visa, which isn't small, but she only works on localization half time. She's a product manager also, but she relies super heavily on vendors. And I really wonder if that's a future model for understaffed localization teams to rely on vendors for some level of management as well. With that little teaser for you guys who would be on the side of delivering something like that, what do you think? What tells you that your client really needs you, you know, and what are the limitations there that you see with clients? I think it's time for Fabiano to lead again. We're playing round robin here.
So I think, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I think it depends on every environment. I was attending that webinar when she said that she was the single person in localization. I thought, Visa, okay, that's interesting.
Right?
Who would have thought? Yeah, I know. I think, you know, there are areas where outside help is very welcome, but and we're here to help. That's the goal. This is exactly
Right.
what we're doing here. And I think the three of us on this panel would be happy to help anyone who's out there listening and in our different capacities. But I think on the other hand, it seems that lean team seems to be the new MO. I don't think, you know, anything will be changing in the future, in the foreseeable future. This seems to be the new norm. However, I think there are things that should be concentrated internally. So the control, the accountability, they need to be internalized. You cannot hand over all control to your vendor, who potentially will not be your vendor in the long run, who has all the information. So that will be impactful for your decisions and for your work moving forward. So I think there is a distinction between what you can hand over and what you should keep inside, and try to engage more with other teams and get out of our localization bubble and start talking to marketing, start talking to product more actively to make sure that you are part of the ecosystem of the company, like Bart was saying, and you no longer, as we no longer are those people only responsible for the quality of linguistic quality. I think once we start thinking as in the outcome for the company, not for the department, the position changes completely. You start having a more relevant role in the whole environment of the company, and then you can start discussing business outcomes instead of localization outcomes. But for that, and this is probably what the very senior person, I'm sorry, I forgot her name, from Visa.
Hui Zhu.
Huizu, yes,
Yeah,
yes. I hope
yeah.
she's not there. Huizu, if you're listening.
I might be butchering her name, but I'm doing the best I can.
But this is it. She's obviously doing it. She's
Right.
using half of her time doing localization because it can be done. You know, the structure is already there. I think she's been there for many years, 20 plus years or 15 plus years. So
Yeah,
she's
yeah.
already built the structure. She has a good ecosystem. She relies on her partners, and she's ready to move on to discuss other areas.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Knowing her personally, she was like one of our earliest localizer customers, right? She is both technically astute, but she's also very well networked within her company. And so you know, I don't know that every localization person has that level of mastery. So there's some, you know, she's an extreme example, you know, and she
Okay.
has very, very close client relationships. So, you know, but she, you know, the impressive thing is she's not afraid to delegate. For instance, we have one customer success engineer specifically who takes care of her account. You know, that there's a relationship there. He's on a Visa issued networked PC, for instance, and he's part of their network, which is, you know, not every client's going to do that, right? Right, but that's the level that she integrates. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I would like
sorry.
I would like to add something because I'm quite passionate about the question which you are asking. When should clients bring in outside help? Because most likely we would all answer as soon as possible. But our reality, at least at Milengo, is they often come when it's quite late. I wouldn't say too late, but rather later. And I was reflecting, why is that? I came to the conclusion that it's because of the transformation of our industry. There have been the old version of the localization industry and now a new version of the localization industry, and localization companies is evolving. And many clients still believe that localization companies like ours protect and defend human processes. While they would love to buy technical solutions. So this is kind of the conflict which we had for many years. And I think it is our duty to educate the market that there is what is called the transformation from LSPs, language service providers, to LSIs, language solutions integrators, so that there are these new type of companies who build the AI infrastructure and only use human in the loop where it is needed and don't want to sell it by all means. So I think this is why we are seeing clients not talking to us. We have lost clients temporarily for 6 to 12 months because they said, I rather not going to talk to Milengo because they will try to sell me human translation services, which is slow, expensive, but I want to go full AI. And then they're experimenting, and then it works for a certain time frame, and then problems accumulate. And then with our sales follow-up activities, to say so, staying in contact with them, they are becoming more open, talking about their problems, and then realizing kind of that modern LSIs can be a partner in setting up the translation AI infrastructure and the processes and quality models and all the technical solutions for contextualization and all the other details. So kind of, it's a shame that clients are often coming rather later than earlier, but I think we own part of the problem.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? Because this is kind of the first time that technical solutions for localization came from outside of the industry. So unlike TM or even MT, which was sort of an academic effort, the LLM generative AI revolution started in big business. So those big companies, they can communicate with whoever wants to listen on the IT side of enterprise, and they use it to penetrate industries that are kind of new to them, like legal, life sciences, and so on. They don't have what it takes to understand the linguistic nuance. You guys do, right? But you have to stop communicating with just the localization people, because they are not your buyer. The buyer is the enterprise. These are the people that tell you, we need to go 1,000 times faster. We need to do, as we said earlier today, outcomes over word counts, right? These are the kind of folks that make the decision and allocate those budgets, and you need to show that you're indispensable in that conversation. Funnily enough, if you recall this recent study from MIT across multiple different types of applications, only 5% of AI POCs go to production. The rest just kind of fizzle out and are a waste of time. And I think, yes, those customers sometimes have to go through that difficult realization that they need some outside help. Hopefully they have not blown all the budget on hobby playing with the models.
That's a really powerful number. Is that 5% number, is that part of the recent AI report that RWS, I'm forgetting the title of the report, but
no, that came from MIT. I can find that report if you want. You can later post it.
Yeah, if you would. Kate will send out like a post webinar thing, and we always like to throw some links into that. So don't let it sit in your inbox. Open it for those in the audience. All right, very good. I'm going to get to the next screen here. It's our last screen, so have your questions at the ready, certainly. Let me share this. I forgot to share it the last webinar. All right, so this is the path forward. What's the first move for companies if they're stuck? What would you tell a localization manager is important? What do you wish people did, understood before setting out? Take any one of those questions as you like, but this is your chance to paint a sort of a positive image of where you see the best of client relationships and outcomes and business outcomes can be. Thanks.
I could go.
I love that.
So yeah, coincidentally, yesterday we also threw a webinar. It was by invitation only. I think I see a few people here in the participant list that were there. CSA Research has recently published two very interesting articles, pieces. One is why language is an issue in this for CEOs in the AI area. And so it's directed to CEOs to C-level to understand the things that we've been discussing here, the importance of language and the role of those of us working there, those of you, mostly localization people. And the other one is an interesting one. It's called Effective Executive Messaging, that talks about how to address these issues and how to incorporate the lingo into your day-to-day communication with the C-suite. This is the second activity that we do around this elevation of the role of industry leaders to position themselves in the new era. I had two very interesting people who made it. There is Teresa Toronjo, who will be at Lock Road presenting how her initial proposal was deflected, but then she led a beautiful project with 45 people across 6 departments called Mouth.com. That was the most strategic project in 2025 for her company. I think if I could send a message to everyone in the room, try, as Bart mentioned earlier, think of the business outcome. Start changing the language that you're using in your day-to-day. Business don't care about word count or language quality or turnaround time. It's time that we start talking about business outcomes and things that will have an impact on the revenue. Learn the language of the company. Listen to the message from the CEO. Look at the mission, the vision, everything. Go back to the basics and learn how to address these issues, because we are part of this. And be a little bit more hopeful. I think more companies will understand, instead of following the trend and just firing everyone just for the sake of AI, because everyone is doing AI. I think companies will start learning from the good examples. And there is a beautiful one from IKEA. There's a case study. AI was dealing with 47% of their customer service calls. And then instead of firing everyone from call center, because those are the people who knew the product, who knew the company, they upskilled those people, transformed them into design consultants, opened a new business, and they are making 1.4 billion out of this new business revenue stream. Think of revenue streams. What can you introduce in your company to generate revenue or to improve profitability? That with the help of AI. Don't let AI replace you, but use it to your benefit.
Wow. I think we can close the webinar. Who's going to top that?
I can probably add something. I fully agree with Fabiano. And what's most surprising, Adam, you mentioned that a lot of localization teams are now significantly reduced. And that's pretty surprising, because a couple of years when LLM came out, or the more powerful versions of LLM, I would have assumed that in 5 years, you will not find websites which are not at least localized into 10 languages, at least for any global organization. But there's still a lot of limitation when it comes to multilingual communication, kind of localized websites, documentation, and kind of user support, et cetera, et cetera. So I would have assumed that clients see the opportunity to utilize the localization teams to finally overcome these language barriers without increasing the budgets. So instead of reducing the budgets, using the same budget, but doing 10x with it, because this is what is possible with the support of AI these days. So kind of, I would absolutely advocate for making the possible solutions more visible in the organization to upper management, making clear what can be done with the existing budgets instead of reducing budgets. Having said that, I'm coming from a conference here in Germany where we had a couple of hundred attendees coming from the technical documentation background, and there was one main pattern from the client side, and that was, yes, we know, but we don't have the time and headspace to think about how to do the AI transformation in our department properly. Mm-hmm. And my answer here would be, then find the simple thing which helps you the most to free up time so that you can work more strategically in your department and support the company with the AI transformation. And that can often be simple things like integrations, kind of sounds stupid, but at least here in Germany, there are still a couple of companies who are managing translation and localization workflows by email without having proper system integrations, which saves so much time, or any other kind of automation or small parts which you can outsource so that you have the time and headspace to drive the AI transformation in your localization department. I think this is what would help the companies a lot, because otherwise IT takes over and they pretend to know how to build localization processes, they don't, because they don't have the linguistic knowledge, they don't have the process knowledge, etc., etc. So a lot of knowledge would be wasted. Yeah, that's kind of.
If I could maybe open the aperture a little bit here and try to finish with a somewhat positive message. Maybe I'm biased, but I think there are a lot of very smart people in the industry. I'm biased because I've been in the industry for a long time, and all of them are my friends. So maybe that's why. But look, it's happening everywhere. Okay, so it's not just us; it's almost every aspect of human commercial activity right now. You have, in healthcare, you have diagnostics and drug discovery run by AI. In financial services, you have fraud detection, you have algorithmic trading. In retail and commerce, you have personalization, right? There are a lot of aspects that change because of these technologies that became available. Now, I want to believe that in the localization industry, we are ready for that because we have gone through multiple revolutions before, not least of which was the whole thing where we started using machines that translate. Earlier on, we had to learn or relearn what output means and what fluency and accuracy and what the relationship is when we stopped translating and started post-editing or reviewing and so on, right? So I think we have the resilience, the skills, the experience to deal with it. And to all of these people who say that they are going to be replaced by AI, I don't think you are. You're going to be replaced by somebody smart who knows how to use AI to do a better job.
Well done. Yeah.
I saw a tweet from somebody who's sort of related in our industry, but not in our industry. That right in Silicon Valley, and she wrote that all these layoffs are, she called them lazy. Blaming it on AI is lazy. If anything, I would say to my team, hey, we're going to have to be leaner because of these conditions, but I all want you to be AI experts so that you're more productive, so that you're the kind of employee of tomorrow. And I think that, as Bart says, that's not picking on our industry in particular, or localization, traditional managers and engineers and the like. It's literally, hey, this is a really important tool. It's affecting all areas of commerce and development, and we got to run with it. It's important to use it well. Let's open this up to questions in the audience. I have a few questions ahead of time. Let me get the Q&A thing open. So if you have a question, use that Q&A button and have it there. We've almost used up our time, so we're going to have to be quick. I have one question here. Why can't we just do all this ourselves with like a modern TMS or AI tool, like just submit stuff to Claude or whatever your favorite engine is?
I think you can, if you have the capacity. I would say the knowledge is probably like if you have technical people in the localization team and you have the capacity, you can build it. The question is, can you maintain it in longer terms? Can you keep up with the end-to-end processes, changes in connectivity, newest model coming up, Japanese not performing as they expected? and you need a lot of groundwork for structuring the data for proper contextualization, as long as you want to go for full AI translations, terminology groundwork, and all this a bit more time-consuming and not so exciting work you have to do to lay the ground to really benefit from reliable AI translations.
All right, so think of it. You could have a workflow where I automate content into one AI, properly prompted. I have a second AI that's a different AI validating those translations, and maybe even a third AI offering corrections for whatever the second one is. Do I even need a human in the loop?
It's funny, you just described our product from about 2 years ago.
Sorry.
It's very dear to me because I was part of the team that developed it, and we got a patent for it, which was an amazing experience. And around the time we released it, we did a pitch for an enterprise customer, and they said, "Well, this looks great. Thank you very much. We're going to build it on our own." And then a few weeks ago, they came back and they said, "Can we do a POC with you?"
Mm-hmm.
Because it just didn't work.
Right. Common experience for me as well. All right. At this point, Kate, do you see any questions that have come in on the Q&A interface, or I'm not seeing it?
Yeah, there is just one, just appeared like a second ago in the Q&A.
Oddly, I'm not seeing the Q&A button. Can you just read it out loud?
Yeah, sure. So question is from Valerie. What is the top non-negotiable AI learning you recommend for project managers who lost their job or trying to get back into the industry?
Great. Really appreciate that.
Reach out to me, Valerie. We'll talk about it. I have lots of interesting references to share.
Okay, but that's a question that probably applies to more than one person. Somebody else want to spout out a few ideas?
My answer would be pretty simple, and I'm not sure if that is satisfying. But kind of there is a lot of knowledge in the LLMs about AI localization in itself. So often when we don't know how can we build this connectivity, the first thing is we research it with an LLM. And again, as usual, it's not always accurate, but it's very good guidance how you can work with it. So kind of ChatGPT and the like are super helpful for educating your knowledge, and I'm encouraging all my people at Milengo to do the same on a daily basis, because it's the most pragmatic tool for learning. It doesn't provide you with the official certificate or degree, but it helps a lot to increase the knowledge.
Let's not forget YouTube. There's a lot on YouTube.
Yes.
A lot of tutorials. All right. Some better than others. All right. So we will sort of collaborate a little bit on follow-up. You'll be hearing from Kate. There is a recording of this webinar, of course, and everyone will be sent the recording automatically. There's nothing you have to do. That should be to you, say, tomorrow or the next day. Well, tomorrow being Friday or Monday, something like that. And I want to thank you all. You all put a lot of thought into the questions and the discussion. Really easy to work with all of you, which makes my job a pleasure and Kate's job a pleasure. And take care, everyone. And thanks to the audience for joining us. Quite a few of you stayed the whole time, so appreciate it. And there's Kate, who actually makes all this happen. All right.
No, okay. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us. Yes, thank you all.
Our pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.